Alright guys, what's going on? Today is probably the dumbest comparison we could possibly think of. I've got Spite back there on the camera manning it, giving us a nice little thumbs up. Today we're going to be looking at two bikes that, on the face of it, look similar enough, but I think once you realize the differences, you'll see they're very different. Without further ado, we are checking out today the DRZ and the Scrambler Desert Sled. So let's jump in. So as many of you know, the reason why we have this wonderful DRZ400 in our stable is because of our beginner bike giveaway series. So this bike, along with the Ninja 400 and the CB650R, will be given away for free. If you hit the link down below on yammie.co, you can get signed up and enter to win. Or if you like, you can pick up one of these cool shirts along with all the other cool merch we have going on. And every dollar you spend gets you an entry to win. So I do have to plug that in because it's the reason why we have this DRZ and the reason why we're doing this video. So click the links below, check that out, and let's see how these two bikes do against each other. Alrighty guys, so again, it's the weirdest comparison. I know that if you are familiar with both of these bikes or familiar with dual sporting, you're probably like, you should not be comparing these two bikes at all. But I think for a lot of people, they see the similarities between them. They look similar. They both have knobby tires. They both have these high fenders, you know. So I think a lot of people might not cross shop these two bikes, but if you're a beginner rider, you might see these two bikes and think, oh, they're both, you know, meant for off-roading. They're both meant for, you know, adventure and that kind of stuff. But there's some key differences between the two of them. So I want to walk through that. We've got this massive list of specs right here. The first big one that anyone, you can't really ignore it, is price. The Scrambler Desert Sled comes in at about $12,000 MSRP, and the Suzuki DRZ400 is about $6,800 on the showroom floor. So you're talking a differential of about $6,000. You could pick up a Ninja 400 and this bike, and it would cost about the same as this. So that's already your key kind of thing to see. You're like, oh, these bikes are really, really different. The other really big difference is this has a pokey 398cc single-cylinder engine, great for off-roading. It's got plenty of torque to get you pulled up through hills and stuff. The Scrambler features the 803cc V-twin or L-twin, depending on who you ask, engine from Ducati. This thing makes about 75 horsepower and buttloads of torque. I don't know the exact figure. And then this bike makes somewhere in the vicinity of about 45 to 46 horsepower, if I remember correctly. But a great amount of torque for off-road. The other really big difference is this bike is fuel injected. You put in the key, you flip it down, and you start it up, don't even have to think twice about it. And the DRZ400, if you can believe it, 2019 off the showroom floor comes with a carburetor. So it has a 36mm Mikuni single carb, and if you don't know about anything about carburetors, basically there's no computer controlling the air-to-fuel mixture on this motorcycle. It's all done manually, old school carbureted. And that's because this bike hasn't been updated since like the year 2000. So again, it's like another kind of nail in the coffin for like, why are we even making this video, you know? But I think it's fun to compare them and contrast them, and, you know, for beginner riders, you know, looking at both of them might be worth a look at. The other really big thing about these two bikes, even though I think the DRZ is a proper kind of beginner bike, if you're willing to put up with the large seat height and some of the other weird quirks about it, the Scrambler is definitely not a beginner bike. I think it's too expensive, a little too powerful. I wouldn't recommend it to a beginner personally. But the big thing is this bike has a 34-inch seat height, which is quite a bit taller than the regular Scrambler. So if you mount up on it, you can actually see that, you know, it's a decent seat height. You actually sit pretty tall and upright on it, but it is nowhere near as tall as the DRZ. If we mount up on the DRZ, you'll notice this seat's already, it's about right where my hip is. So if I swing a leg over right here, you know, I've got a 32-inch inseam, and I'm pretty much on my tippy toes. And you have to really kind of sit more upright like this. So these two bikes sit completely differently, even though they look really similar. Although the one thing is, because this is a single cylinder and it's much smaller, you can really kind of tip it over to one side and get a foot down pretty easily, and because it's not that heavy either. The other elephant in the room, literally elephant, is the scrambler, and it's something we have to talk about at this bike, is a heavy pig. It weighs 456 pounds. For people who are familiar with dual sporting and off-road riding, that is an enormous amount of weight, which is kind of funny though, because the KLR 650 actually weighs the same amount as this bike, but don't tell anybody that. They don't like to hear that. They don't like to hear that. But the DRZ, on the other hand, weighs about 317 pounds, which is phenomenally lighter than the Scrambler. So that's going to make it a lot easier for you to take it off-road and have fun with it. And if you drop it, you can more easily pick it up than a bike like this, which in off-road riding, you're going to be dropping your bike a lot. Ask me how I know. So yeah, I think the difference in weight is a really, really big factor in these two bikes. And you can really kind of see it too. So if you notice here on the DRZ, you can tell how slim it is, how small it is. You can see through parts of it. There's just not a whole lot of mass here on this motorcycle, where as opposed to the Scrambler, you can tell it's this big, dense, heavy lump of a bike. You've got this big trellis frame and the engine sitting right here, the 2 cylinders. It's a whole lot bigger and just more massive than the Scrambler. But the funny thing is, when you get both of them up to speed, they actually feel pretty light, both of them in the saddle. But now I'm going to throw it over to Spite so you can get some camera time, and he'll talk you over some other key differences on these bikes.
All right, guys, Spite here. So I wanted to take a quick second and talk about the transmissions in these bikes, because it actually is kind of an important thing in the modern era. The Suzuki DRZ actually only has a 5-speed transmission, and the only other bikes that I can think of that do that off the top of my head are other farm bikes or Harley Sportsters. The Scrambler actually has a 6-speed transmission like you'd expect from a modern motorcycle. Another thing that's important to talk about with these bikes is the ground clearance and the wheel sizes. So being a proper dual sport, the DRZ has a ground clearance of almost 12 inches. It's 11.8. And then the Scrambler here has a 9.4 inch ground clearance, which, I mean, even as a bonehead who doesn't know anything about off-roading, I can say that, you know, if you're going to try and jump curbs or go over rocks or whatever, you're going to want a taller, more nimble suspension, which, you know, the Scrambler does have to an extent, but it's just got to go to the DRZ. And then the tires, of course, the DRZ, I mean, you can just look at it. The DRZ has a much bigger set of tires on here. Specifically, the front is a 21-inch tube, and in the back we have an 18-inch. I'm not sure how much you care about width, but if you do, it's an 80-100 up front and a 120-90 in the back. And then finally for the Scrambler, we have a 19 tire up front and a 17 in the back. Again, if you care about actual width, it's a 120-70 up front and a 170-60 in the back. And actually, as a road-going rider, I know the 170 is going to provide a little bit more of that street oomph that you want when you're going through a turn. But really, that's kind of the deep dive, quote unquote, on the specs and the sheets on these bikes. So let's get them out on the road.
Alrighty, Spite, you ready to take out the old desert sled? See what you think?
Yeah, I'm interested. I rode it, for those at home, I've ridden it very briefly, just in a parking lot before, but interested to see how it feels on a road.
Yeah, and you rode in the DRZ on the way up here, so you'll have a good kind of back-to-back that you can kind of compare it to.
Yup.
I think the first thing I'll notice is how it just feels more substantial and way less vibey. It actually feels like a, you know, road-going motorcycle.
It still has that weird seat thing that I don't like about the Scrambler, or the DRZ, where I can't figure out where it actually wants me to sit.
Yeah, it does a little bit better, but the DRZ really have to kind of be all up in it, you know?
Yep. Oh, I love that feel. V-twin time. Oh, that's so nice, dude.
Yeah, I think for me, the first thing I noticed about the DRZ versus the Sled is just like, man, this bike is narrow, you know? Holy crap. I feel like my toes are touching.
Yeah, no, this actually, this feels really nice and wide. It feels like a naked bike.
Yeah, to me, the Sled just kind of feels like a big naked bike that has these crazy upright bars.
And that is very smooth for a V-twin. Wow.
Yeah. It's a nice ride. It's also fun for me just seeing it go down the road because I've never seen it go down the road before. What a great looking bike.
The tires feel so strange. Wow. I mean, that's...
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it feels like there's a very clear line where it's like, okay, now I'm on the side.
Yeah.
And then I stand it up and it switches to the center blocks.
Yeah.
And now I'm on the side again.
For those at home, I am not running the standard tire on the Desert Sled. I've got the Moto Z or Motaz, however you want to pronounce it, Tractionator Adventure. It's a much knobblier tire because I take the Scrambler off-road quite a bit, and I needed something with a little more bite and gravel and dirt. So it's a much knobbier than the standard Pirelli Rally Scorpions that it comes with.
But it feels so good in a turn, especially for something on such an aggressive knobby tire.
Yeah.
Like, I really do feel like you could just rip this all day long.
Oh, yeah. And that's one thing with the DRZ, you start to realize its limitations as a road bike, in that, you know, it's vibey, it's plasticky, it's small, it's, you know, on highway speeds, it's really kind of buzzy and floaty. This is great for a short sprint across town to get to the trail, but I wouldn't want to take this thing across country, you know?
Oh, definitely not. Even just on the highway when we were up here, it was unpleasant, and it really did have kind of almost like a head shake, but not really. Just a little bit of input and those tires will flop over on you.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Dude, I love the power delivery of a V-twin. It's just so immediate and so just aggressive. I love it.
Yeah.
One thing though, is it feels like your brake pedal's kind of short.
Yeah, I think I need to go get that checked out. Oh, the rear brake, I thought you meant the front.
No, the rear brake, like I feel like I have to stick my toe under the bike to grab it.
Oh, yeah, so I adjusted it to make it a little more upright and kind of pointed towards me, because when I'm off-road and I'm standing on the pegs, I found that it was like a really long reach to actually get it to actuate, so I adjusted it to be quite taller, a little more closer to the foot, you know?
And I guess that goes into a nice kind of like comparison point. Because it's so much wider, so much more substantial, it feels like the controls, you kind of have to look for them, whereas on the DRZ, they're just right there ready for you.
And I think it speaks to the nature of these bikes. I think the DRZ is a true sort of like 50-50 motorcycle. I might even peg it closer to like 40 on-road, 60% off-road, and the Sled is very much like an 80% on-road, 20% off-road kind of bike. It's much more in the kind of adventure category. It's a bike you want to take down some gravel roads, maybe a couple trails here and there, but anything a little gnarlier and it says like, okay, take me back to the coffee shop, you know, I don't really want to be out here anymore.
It's so up, it's literally, it feels like I gotta puff my chest out to ride it right, you know?
Yeah, it's the bars are really wide and tall, huh?
I love that though. It feels great.
Yeah.
Like, I could seriously see this having forwards and just being a cruiser.
Really?
Yeah, no, it feels very similar to like a mid, I mean the seat is so much higher, but it feels very similar to like a mid-peg Harley Davidson, kind of, as much as you might not want to invite that comparison.
Well, I mean, they are similar. V-twins, like air-cooled, back to basics. I could see it.
Oh, it's so good though. It sounds so nice. I love that.
Yeah, it pulls nice, man. 803 cc's of torque.
And those brakes are solid too.
Yeah, that's the other really big difference between these two bikes is the Ducati's got those big Brembos on it versus the DRZ that has, I don't know, these unnamed, like very small brakes. You definitely feel the difference in braking performance. But it's crazy how you get in these more like scraggly conditions and the DRZ is just like, oh, it's time to do fun things. It just feels so at home in like more kind of mixed environments.
Yeah, just moving this around, I can feel the weight of that front tire. You know, especially as I get down to slower conditions, it takes a little bit more effort.
Yeah.
To turn the bars.
Man, it does look good though.
It feels pretty good. I mean, having never really off-roaded a bike before.
Yeah. Oh man. You know, it's funny because for me, like, I'm so vain. I was sold on that bike the minute I saw it. Like, it just looks so fucking cool.
It does have that kind of, you know, visually arresting style.
Yeah. And for those at home, obviously I'm biased because that is my personal motorcycle, so I do love it. So if I do sound effusive to it, that's why. But let's continue the comparison. Let's keep talking about these two bikes. I think the DRZ, for being a single cylinder, is really pokey and torquey though.
Yeah, that was one thing I did notice. It really is easy to tractor it around.
Yeah.
I feel like I had to work the clutch a little bit while we were doing that little off-road play there on the sled. I feel like that you could literally just leave the clutch all the way out and bog that engine down.
Oh yeah.
And it'll just do it.
Yeah, there's a reason the DRZ is known in the off-road community as kind of like the tractor, you know, it just kind of muscles up anything you want it to. It just plows through stuff. And I think it's a really good balance of, you know, weight and power. I think a lot of people think about the DRZ and they're like, oh, it's 400 cc's, it's going to be slow. But honestly, because it's so light, it feels really peppy. Like, I don't feel like it's that slow.
No, I think the only point you really feel quote-unquote slow is on the highway. Really where
Yes.
that's where it has its biggest black mark, is because especially when you're trying to dig for that non-existent sixth gear.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point the bike is getting very buzzy on you. It doesn't feel happy.
Yeah, it's a tough ride on the highway at speeds of 70 and up. It's not very fun.
I will say though, I can hear that new Leo Vinci on there brapping away, and it has the character of a, you know, of a sumo bike now, or more, you know, off-roady bike.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, this still has that Italian V-twin note.
Yeah, I think fundamentally the Scrambler, it is a road bike. You know, it's a road bike that can go off-road pretty well. I think it surprises a lot of people when they do try it out. And the DRZ is an off-road bike that can go on-road, you know. That, I think, is the big difference.
But man, I would absolutely own one of these in a heartbeat. This is sweet, dude.
Yeah. But do you see what I mean, though, about how it has, like, the same kind of hooligan factor as the DRZ, but in more of, like, a exotic kind of Italian way, you know? Like, you definitely still just want to act really stupid with that bike. At least I do when I ride it.
Yeah, it's very playful. In the same way that the DRZ is. The DRZ has just that, you know, let's jump curbs, let's, you know, pop wheelies, let's do all of that good stuff. Yeah.
And that's what I really love in a motorcycle. I love the feeling of, like, let's just have fun, you know, let's see. And we were talking about earlier, the Ninja 400 is like that too, where it's like, dude, just rev it out, brake later, turn in harder, like, this is awesome.
Yep. I guess my only qualm would be, you know, I would be more inclined to do it on the DRZ than the Scrambler, not because the Scrambler is yours, and but because the DRZ has that kind of lightweight, plasticky feel.
Yeah,
where
I don't feel like if I drop this thing, I wouldn't feel bad at all.
No, it feels like it's designed to be dropped, picked back up, and put right back on the road.
Yep.
Whereas this, if it goes down, that would bring a tear to your eye.
Yes, as it
And
has
your
many
wallet.
times. It's brought many tears to my eyes because I'm very dumb and I keep taking it on trails and just binning it and having fun with it. But I don't know, for me, I'm like, it was designed to do that, so whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to give you an idea of the testament of the DRZ, when I was in Mexico a few weeks back, taking that bike on those trails down there and having fun with it, one of the guys in our group had I believe it was a DR650, so the big brother to the 400 here. And he actually ended up hitting a big ridge on the highway and sliding the bike out going about, like, you know, 55 miles per hour. So he tumbled off into the forest, or the fields rather, and his bike slid down the road, sparks flying off of it and stuff. And I was like, oh, this guy's day is done, you know, like, holy shit, the bike is ruined. But again, to give you the idea of how indestructible these bikes are, He just picked it up, he kind of scuffed it off a little bit, checked it, and it was good to go, and he rode it home.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that bike low-sided at 55 miles per hour, slid across the road for a good, like, I don't know, 50 feet or more. Just picked it up, and he's like, guys, it's fine. So, if you want one of these bikes, if you win this bike for sure, that'd be awesome. But if you pick one of them up, dude, like they're literally indestructible. I think they're more indestructible than the KLRs, to be honest, because I know they get the big rap of being like the indestructible bikes, you know.
And I guess that, you know, another thing is because it's so ancient and it's existed forever, if something goes wrong on it, you could just get any, you know, DRZ400 piece and just slap it on.
Oh my god,
there.
yeah. I mean, this thing is probably put together with like parts bin from everything else. It's probably so easy to find parts for it, like anywhere you are, you know. Whereas something like the Scrambler, if something goes wrong with it, it's going to be harder to find pieces for it, you know.
Yeah, you're off to your Ducati dealership to order it from Italy, special order, wrapped in biscotti and fine aged coffee.
Yes. They don't like that fresh roasted stuff. They like the aged coffee. Yeah, we'll do a very small bit of off-roading here with the DRZ.
I will not be joining on the sled.
Thank you.
I'm gonna sit here and try and find neutral.
It's basically impossible.
Try.
God, it's so easy on this bike. It's ridiculous.
Funny thing, I actually, having literally never put a bike in the dirt, was able to hop a curb earlier, that same curb.
Yeah.
First time lucky.
Yeah, you've literally never done any kind of off-roading, any serious off-roading in your life, and you just took the DRZ and just did the same thing I just did with it. So it's just super playful. It's so easy to ride it around and do that kind of stuff with it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Let's get a little exhaust check on both of them, since they both have exhausts. Give us one on the Scrambler.
All right.
That's very good.
Yes.
That's going to be hard to beat.
Oh, it's so nice.
Here, stand behind the DRZ. We'll pop some revs on it. It's that classic brappy kind of single cylinder, so if you're into it, it's fucking sweet.
Yep.
The hardware on the DRZ makes me so sad, though. Like, this kill switch and these buttons, I'm like, Christ, it's so old. It's so old. Like, I mean, look at this.
Yeah.
It's so old.
It makes sense, though, because the, you know, if you want to take it off-road and you break the switch cluster...
Oh, yeah.
You can get it from any, you know, DRZ that ever existed ever and just put it on there and be good to go.
Yeah, Suzuki's probably made, like, tens of thousands of these bikes, and so they're probably so simple to find pieces for, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Shall we swap and head back out, or do you want to...
Let's do it, yeah.
All right. Get you back on your loyal
on my steed. I can just feel the mass immediately. Like, just even shuffling it with my legs, I'm like, wow, this thing weighs so much more.
And the lack of it here, it is night and day.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is a much comfier ride.
The bars are both higher and wider on the sled than they are on this, which is interesting.
The thing I love about the Sled, though, is like this ratio of like how tall these bars are and where the foot pegs are. You can stand so easily on this bike. It works so well to stand up on. Yeah, I mean, it's so obvious riding these back-to-back. Like, this is a road bike, you know? Like, it's a road bike that can go off-road, but you start riding on the street, like, oh yeah, like this just feels like a cool naked bike almost, you know?
I do immediately miss the power, though.
Yeah.
Like, immediately, I have to wind this through a couple of gears to keep up.
Yeah, the torque on the Ducati is, I would just say, delicious. It feels so nice.
That is a very Ducati way to put it.
But it is, man. Like, it just feels so just meaty, you know?
Oh, it absolutely. I'm not arguing. It's such a nice, rewarding thing. I mean, you could be in any gear and just whack the throttle open and you're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, the DRZ, though, like, first through third gear, it really pulls. It pulls really nice and hard. But when you're on these kind of more flowing sections, something like this is going to treat you to. You know, a lot more torque coming out of the turns.
But I mean, it keeps up.
Oh yeah, for sure.
One thing I do notice riding them back to back is the peak on this front fender is way in my view. It feels like it's 6 feet in front of me, whereas I didn't see it past the light on the Sled.
Yeah, that front fender on the DRZ is enormous. I can see it poking out a little bit on the Sled, but on the DRZ it's always kind of there. It's also a very square and unpleasant shape.
Yeah. I am surprised by how the DRZ feels in a turn. I really kind of was expecting it to be, you know, just kind of wrong, but it's handling them just fine.
Yeah, I think people get in their own heads about it where they're like, oh, it's got such skinny tires, it's gonna feel really skittery in the turns, but at a very moderate pace, it flicks in super fast and it holds a line just fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with it, you know?
Yeah, there's not much inertia in that front tire, so it really does come over quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, it is funny though. I am noticing now just how wide these bars are on the Scrambler.
Yeah, man, because I have a really wide stance. Like, I'm sure people have been irritated by it in the videos before, but I grab the, you know, weights on the end of all the handlebars. It's just more comfortable for me.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had my elbows in the breeze on the Scrambler.
Yeah, I was actually watching you ride it, and it looked like your arms were like it looked like you're about to bear hug somebody.
But it does just how, you know, the DRZ feels. It wants you to do hooligan stuff. It wants you to pop the front wheel up. It wants you to go into the dirt. It wants you to do dumb shit.
And I think that really speaks to the nature of both of these bikes. You know, even though one is designed a little bit more for off-road than the other one, the fact that they both make you want to just like have fun and goof around is a great quality. It's a really great quality. But then it also speaks to the fact of how, like, you know, even though they look very similar, and maybe someone who doesn't know much about bikes might think they're super similar, much like a Ninja 400 and a ZX10, looks can be deceiving, you know?
Absolutely. I do love the little D-cell pop, though.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure people in the comments are going to be like, oh, God, you're going to destroy that bike. You got to rejet it now. It feels fine. It really does feel fine.
Yeah, it's fine. That slip-on is pretty restrictive. We're not running an open pipe or something. It's perfectly fine. We will address the carbs, though, for sure, because I think it'd be a fun video to make, but it's fine right now.
It's also kind of nice to be able to see these, you know, gravel patches in the road and just not care.
Yeah, remember I was telling you about that when you're on the Scrambler, where like if you see some kind of rough patch in the road, you're just like, it's gonna be fine. Nothing's gonna happen.
Yep, you can just trust the tires. Whereas on a sport bike, you're like, I gotta be careful. I gotta slow down, make sure I'm not too leaned over.
Uh-huh.
You want to do a little pull here and see what happens?
It is our spot, isn't it?
Let's let this guy go.
This guy coming, yeah.
I'm just expecting you to just fly by.
All right. You want to do it from second gear, first gear? What do you want to do?
Let's just go from start, see what happens.
All right, let's go.
No contest.
Well, it is 400 more cc's. It would be surprising if it kept up.
I feel like
I was shifting around like 9,000 too. I wasn't really pushing it super hard.
It felt just so easy right off the line though. Like, I would hazard to guess that I had a better like 0 to 10, but after that the DRZ is just, it's not built for what we just did.
No, not at all.
Although I did feel the wheel come up on me a little bit when I shifted into second.
I could see that. I mean, the DRZ is a wheelie monster. I'm not good enough to pop wheelies with it, but I know it's literally so easy to do wheelies on it.
I think I have the added benefit of the suspension just sags so much underneath me.
Yes,
That,
it really does.
Like I'm not
Like
sure
if you were to
see.
ride that bike, yes, I can definitely see. If you were to ride that bike long term, we definitely would need to set the preload for you because that's insane how much it's sagging.
Yep. I can feel it too. It's the geometry feels like the front wheels, wants to naturally lift up.
Yeah, you're on wheelie mode constantly. And again, guys, obviously, like we didn't take them out on trails or anything like that, just because it would be a little too risky, I think, to run both these bikes on trails. Given that you're not super off-road experienced, and neither am I. I dabble a little bit, but I'm not super experienced with it. So I like the trail riding I did with the DRZ, but I wouldn't do much more than that with it. But yeah, final thoughts, Spite.
I guess I'm starting to wake up to the DRZ a little bit.
Because I know at first you really didn't like it, huh?
Yeah, but I could absolutely see myself owning one, honestly. It feels fun to ride. It's just it wants you to do more. And I mean the Scrambler, it's that classic Italian refinement. It's a very nice ride.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they although they are very similar in look, give you very different experiences for both of them. But both amazingly fun motorcycles in their own right, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, guys, thanks so much for watching. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you had some fun watching this video. Again, DRZ being given away for free. Check the links below. Get some merch if you want, or get signed up on the site. The site is the best way to win because if you do, sign up for Tier 1 or Tier 2, you actually get 10 times the entries for every $1 you spend versus the merch stuff. So it actually is the better deal to do it on the website. So go and hit that up, and we'll catch you on the next one.